Hello all, and thank you for tuning in for our CU live stream. So whether this is your first time tuning in or you've been following us from the 2 weeks prior to this, we just want to give you all a big welcome. And to just introduce ourselves, I guess my name's Emmanuel and I'm a second year student studying geography.
Yeah, hi guys. My name's Vanessa. I'm a third year student studying law, and our overall theme for our events weeks has been Imagine. And this week we've been looking at the topic of truth. Yesterday, Dave spoke in the video about what if Christianity matters. If you missed it, follow us on our Instagram page, Imagine Reading University, or on our YouTube Aruku.
And today, Dave will be talking on the question of imagine if you could believe everything you read on the internet. But before that, we have Rebecca sharing her testimony with us. Hello, Rebecca.
Hiya, you all right?
All right. And before you kind of kick into your testimony, could you kind of just give us a little introduction to who you are and kind of what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Becca. I'm a second year student and I'm studying history here at the University of Reading. And I'm just going to share with you my testimony now, which is essentially the story of how I became a Christian. So I was born into a Christian family, which I'm beyond grateful for. And I was going to church and youth groups and Christian camps and those sort of things pretty much all my life. I think I accepted Christ into my life on one of those camps, probably when I was about 13, but it was a very long time ago, and I don't really remember it. I don't really see my journey to becoming a Christian as like a black and white moment. I don't see it as one day I became a Christian. I knew these truths for such a long time about Jesus and the fact he died for me. But I don't really think it made a huge difference to my life. I continued to live pretty much the same way I had. So my journey to really understanding what Jesus had done for me by dying for me took a lot longer than that. When I was 15, my best friend died in a car crash. And it was a real turning point in my relationship with God. Everything I thought I knew about God being all loving and all powerful suddenly felt very distant, and it didn't really make sense to me at all. I was so angry at him. I felt this complete sense of unjustness, and I was really just I pushed God out my life. I didn't really want to follow him anymore after something like that happened. And this feeling of anger didn't really stop for a very long time. Each subsequent year after that, I lost another loved person. So my granny, then my granddad, then my uncle, and they all died from really, really horrible, debilitating illnesses. But I think looking back over those years, I actually see that God, these things don't make sense to me still. I don't understand why bad things have to happen, but I can look back and I can see that actually God was with me through all of it. And that I gained the sense that the world was very hopeless. I felt so lost in it and everything going on to me. But God shone brighter as the world looked bleaker. I was so aware of how powerless we are as humans and how little control we have over our own lives. But that is okay. God has us. We don't need to worry about the days to come. We don't need to worry about what might happen to us because God has planned it out for us, and he does love us, and things may seem unfair, but actually looking at the wider picture of things, he does love us and he does everything for our good. I can look back over these years and see how my pain and suffering was actually used for blessing, even though I still don't understand why the pain and suffering really had to happen. I know that God was with me, and I know that ultimately he does love me and he does do everything he does out of love for us. It took me a long time to understand that everything happens for a reason, but I trust in that now. Each passing day, I'm just leaning on God more and trying to understand more, and that it is him that does everything and controls everything, and that is a good thing and a blessing. So yeah, I'm going to hand back to the host now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Becca, for sharing your story with us. That was very delightful. And thank you for being so open with us. If you felt encouraged or moved by what she said and wanted to learn more, you can look out our talks, and also you can also join us in social spaces where you can chat to others and ask questions about how you feel.
And I will be introducing Dave for our main talk today.
Hi, Emmanuel. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
Hello, Dave. Would you like to, I guess, just to start things off, would you like to kind of tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, my name's Dave. I live in Southampton, and most of what I do is I work with Christian unions all over the place, helping them to think through, to talk about, to help anybody understand what Christianity has to say to students today.
That sounds really good. And now I guess we'll hand over to you, Dave, to take it away.
Great. Well, over the course of Imagine over the last couple of weeks, we've tried to imagine some things that are fairly difficult to believe, haven't we? Imagining a world where everybody is treated fairly, imagining a world without loneliness. Those feel pretty difficult to imagine. But what we're going to try and imagine this evening is kind of laughable. Imagining a world where you could believe everything that was on the internet. Because we all know that's just not true, don't we? Story broke a while ago about a family who had a 3-year-old toddler, and they went to KFC, and the toddler had recently been mauled by her grandfather's dog. And when they were in KFC, the manager came over to them and asked them to leave because other customers were being put off by the wounds that their daughter had. The news story broke and the internet reacted as you would expect the internet to do. Outrage, kerfuffle, drama, petitions, anger. So much so that KFC pledged to do an internal investigation and pledged $30,000 to the family to pay for the medical fees for their daughter's injuries. A GoFundMe was started that raised $135,000. And 3 days later, the news story broke that it was actually all a hoax all along. The problem is that there's lots of stuff on the internet that's not true, and the internet has a horrible habit of believing it. So, what do we do with all of this? The thing is that I'm on the internet right now, and I'm saying we all know we can't believe what's on the internet, which is a kind of odd position to be in, isn't it? I was walking down High Street a couple of years ago in the days when people were on high streets, and there was a guy holding a massive banner that said, "Don't believe anything anyone tells you, including me." And I looked at him and I thought to myself, right. And I just kept on walking, kept on with my life. It's easy for me to say that we should all not believe everything that's on the internet, but I'm on the internet right now. Well, maybe the problem is not just what the internet is, but maybe the problem is actually how we treat the internet. Maybe it's a problem with what we do with it. Imagine you were talking to your great-great-grandparents who were living about 100 years ago. And when they were living about 100 years ago, you said to them things about your modern day life that would blow their mind. You could tell them that right now you can have a conversation with somebody on the other side of the planet and you can be able to see them as well as hear them in real time. They wouldn't be able to imagine a world like that. You could tell them that it's possible for pretty much anybody at a fairly affordable price to fly to anywhere else in the world in a few hours. You could tell them how there's a pandemic sweeping the whole globe and we've all been told to stay at home. All of these things would be staggering to them. But you know what would really blow their minds? You could tell them that we all carry around with us a device everywhere we go, every day. And on that device, we have access to almost all of the information in human history. And we use that device to watch videos of people lip syncing and start arguments with strangers. Maybe the problem is not just the internet. Maybe the problem is how we use the internet to some extent or another. And it's actually pretty good for us to have a degree of skepticism about everything there, everything here. The only problem with that is that skepticism eventually becomes exhausting. Think about a friendship. When you're starting to get to know somebody, nobody begins a friendship by trusting everything somebody says about them. When you're getting to know a stranger, you're not going to believe everything on face value. But if you're going to become friends, you want to become friends with somebody who is trustworthy. And you want them to trust you as well. We don't want to constantly live in a state of skepticism bordering on superstitiousness of everything, because it's exhausting. We want to trust other people, and we want other people to trust us. And this, in some ways, is where the whole thing wheels around on Christianity. Because the person at the center of Christianity, Jesus, he once said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He did not just say, "I'm talking the truth." He said, "I am the truth." He made an ultimate truth claim, an ultimate claim of trustworthiness, which, when you think about it, would be kind of easy to prove wrong, wouldn't it? Imagine one of your friends said to you that they never, ever lie. The way you would prove them wrong would just be going, okay then, and then you'd watch them for the next couple of days. And sooner or later, they'd slip up. They'd make a mistake and cover their own back, or they'd exaggerate on something that they had achieved, or they would do something that wasn't entirely truthful. And yet, when Jesus said, "I am the truth," it's stark and surprising that the people around him at the time didn't point out the gaping hole in his behavior that made a gaping hole in his argument. He said, "I am the truth." He said he was totally trustworthy. Well, what do you think? Do you think Jesus is trustworthy? And in answering that question, we come back around to our problem of whether we can believe everything or not on the internet. Because on what basis do we form our opinion of whether Jesus is trustworthy or not? Let's park that thought for a second and think about something else. Let's think about The Mandalorian. It is possible for you to form a very comprehensive opinion on whether The Mandalorian is good or not without ever watching a single episode of The Mandalorian. There are enough Star Wars loving people in your life and on YouTube for you to hear what they think about The Mandalorian and decide that it is brilliant. There are enough Star Wars hating people in your life and on the internet for you to listen to their opinion and for you to form your opinion about what The Mandalorian is like. But behind all of those things would be the kind of vague question, well, why don't you just watch a couple of episodes and decide for yourself? It's not that hard. You just turn on Disney Plus and watch it. That's actually the best case scenario. What would be even worse still is if you got into a discussion with somebody about whether The Mandalorian is good or not, and you either regurgitated the arguments for how great it is or against how terrible it is, and found yourself having to double down on the position in the hope that nobody dared to ask you the audacious question, have you ever actually watched it for yourself? And actually, it becomes even more complicated than that, doesn't it? Because if you ask, without watching it, those Star Wars loving people if it's any good, you actually already know what their answer is going to be because you know what kind of people they are. And if you ask the Star Wars hating people, you already know what their answer is going to be as well. Which all seems a bit ridiculous if it really is that easy to just turn on Disney Plus and watch it for ourselves and make up our own mind. Which leaves us in a difficult position as well, though, with our question about Jesus and about whether you think he is trustworthy. Jesus once famously asked one of his followers, a guy named Peter, "What does everybody else say about me? What are they all saying?" Peter responded by saying, well, some people are saying this and some people are saying that. And then Jesus interrupted him and said, "And what about you? Who do you say I am?" What would you say if Jesus asked you that question today? What would any of us say? I think we would all be a little bit embarrassed and on edge if we had to respond by going, "Oh, well, I know so-and-so says," or if we responded by going, "Well, lots of people think," or if we responded by going, "Well, I decided when I was a kid, but I've never really thought about it as an adult." But do you see how respectful Jesus is to us? He doesn't say, "This is what you have to say about me." He asks us, "Who do you say I am?" He invites us to find out for ourselves who Jesus is. He invites us to not be totally dependent on what everybody else says he's like, to believe everything on the internet, and to see for ourselves what he is like, and to say for ourselves what he is like? How would you answer when Jesus says, "Who do you say I am?" That, in many ways, is why Reading CU have put on Imagine. We want to give you a chance to be able to see for yourself whether Jesus is trustworthy, whether he is believable, whether he is what Christians claim he is. So if you haven't yet, do take the chance to check out all the stuff we've put on. Look at the stuff that we've done over the last couple of weeks, tune into the rest of the stuff that's going on this week, and take the chance to answer questions as well. Ping in those questions. We'll be spending a few minutes answering them in a while. But it would seem kind of counterintuitive of me to talk about all this and then say, well, why don't you just check out all this stuff that's on the internet? So here's the offer from Reading CU to you. Why don't you fill in one of the feedback forms that the CU have got going right now? You can find them in a link. If you go to the bio on our Instagram page, you'll find the link to the feedback form there. It's where it says, I want to find out more. Fill in that form, and instead of having to believe everything on the internet, a member of the CU will get in touch with you. And you can ask them, why do they think Jesus is trustworthy? And you can decide for yourself whether you think they are a trustworthy person who's saying that to you. But as well as that, you can also say to them, look, if it's that easy to just turn it on and check it out myself, I want to see for myself what this is like. I want to read one of those accounts of Jesus' life for myself and see whether I think he is trustworthy. If you say that to the CU, they will more than happily get you a copy of one of those accounts of Jesus' life and give you an opportunity for you to see for yourself what he is like. So you don't have to believe everything on the internet. You don't have to disbelieve everything on the internet. You can make up your own mind. You can see what he is like. That is the invitation that Reading CU want to extend to you. Whether you can imagine whether Jesus is trustworthy or not. Because we all know we can't believe everything on the internet. Maybe even me. But hey, thanks very much for tuning in and listening. I'm going to hand back to our hosts, Emmanuel and Vanessa, and they're going to take us on to what's next.
Yeah, thank you for sharing with us, Dave. That was really insightful. If while watching you do have any questions, please do post them on sli.do.com using the hashtag ImagineUOR. And this is not the end of the fun as well for today. So if you do want to also join us for a social, we have an escape room at 7:30 p.m. The link will be provided if you do message the CU page on Instagram or on Facebook. So please do join us if you'd like to for the social afterwards.
So now we're going to do some questions and answers that you guys have submitted, and we're going to go through them, and hopefully Dave will be able to answer them for us. The first question is there any real scientific evidence for Jesus? I believe he was real, but how can you prove he is actually God?
Great question. So let me, I'm going to split that in two, if that's okay. So is there any kind of scientific evidence for Jesus? And I believe he's real, but I struggle to believe that he's God. I guess the first, the simplest way to go to that is look at the sources we have about Jesus and whether they're reliable, in the same way that we would look about sources for any historical figure. So we have kind of four direct accounts of Jesus' life, the ones in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the ones, a copy of which the CU will give you if you want one. Basically, the historical reliability for those is incredibly good. That's measured by a bunch of different metrics, whether they're kind of internally credible, so what they say kind of seems to stack up within itself rather than being self-contradictory, but also things like the number of different manuscripts we have of those, the time at which they were written after Jesus' life, the kind of historical evidence for those is very, very good. You can, if you've got more technical questions about that, want to dig into that a little further, you can ask them, we can chat about that a little bit more. I guess in the other half of your question was, you said how you can believe Jesus existed, but you struggle to believe he's God. I think, can I just say that's really understandable. What Christianity, what Christians, what Jesus is saying in asking to believe that he is God is not a light thing, is it? It's not like me asking you to believe that, I know, my hairline is receding. That's quite believable. It's harder to believe that somebody is God. But he did claim those kind of things pretty directly, in the same way that he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Those are big claims that would be pretty easy to falsify, wouldn't they, if you were around with him? Jesus claimed to be able to forgive people's sin. He claimed that he knew the will of the Father when nobody else did. He claimed to have a relationship with God that nobody else had. If he was claiming those kind of things, then he was claiming that he was somebody who was far more than a man. And that means that even if we struggle to believe that he's God, we have to say that he was something, don't we? And if he's the kind of person who's saying that he's the way, the truth, and the life, that he can forgive people's sins, that he knows the Father the way that nobody else does, then, well, we can't just say he was a nice guy. He either has to be somebody who's kind of barking mad or is deliberately lying. And so I guess in your invitation that Jesus extends to all of us to say, well, who do you say I am? If the option is to say he's God, or that he's kind of crazy, or that he's flagrantly lying, well, then why don't you have a look at his life, have a read of the accounts of his life, and see which of those is the most likely to you. Because if he's the kind of person who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I think those are the only options that we've really got. But thanks very much. It's a great question.
Yeah, that was a really good answer as well. Thank you. The second question is, fake news is often written anonymously. What makes the Bible more trustworthy when we also don't know who really wrote it?
Okay, great. So it's a good question, although I guess I would kind of go against your claim somewhat. We could have discussions about who wrote some bits of the Bible. So there's a book in the New Testament called the Book of Hebrews. We don't really know who authored that, but lots of bits of the Bible, certainly, we can claim that, well, the letters themselves, the books themselves claim to have an author. So one of the accounts of Jesus' life is called the Book of Luke. And the reason it's called the Book of Luke is because it was written by a guy called Luke. And it says within the book that this guy called Luke is saying that he's writing it to his friend called Theophilus. So that's a kind of different thing. That means that the accounts of Jesus' life in the Bible are not coming to us from a kind of Twitter egg profile that's just got kind of a name with a load of numbers at the end of it. They're at least claiming to be somebody. Now, they could be wrong, I suppose, they could be right, but what it means is we are kind of weighing up whether they're claiming to be right on the basis of something they're claiming. They're not kind of hiding behind a mirage of anonymity, even if some people are going to dispute whether it's right or wrong. That's one of the things that I think makes the Bible much more credible than a kind of made up internet rumor. They actually are kind of self-admitting who wrote them. They're also, just while we're here, quite self-deprecating. So again, if you were to read those accounts of Jesus' life, often the people who come across as being a bit dim-witted, a bit slow, and often missing the point of what Jesus is saying are the first followers of Jesus, his disciples. Now, if those stories about Jesus were made up by his disciples and his followers after he died, if they were made up, you'd expect those stories to be told in a way where the disciples looked really intelligent and really good. But the fact that they're not, the fact that they're kind of laying out how foolish they were at times, shows that they're committed to honestly telling the story. I think those are a couple of things that kind of separate the Christian accounts of Jesus' life from a kind of conspiracy theory idea.
Oh, great. Yeah, and this is the final question. What if we look into ourselves and still don't see how it's trustworthy? Where's the evidence?
Great. I guess Jesus gives us that chance, doesn't he? Mm. If he says to Peter, and if he says to all of us, who do you say I am? He gives us the dignity, the opportunity to conclude that we can't trust him. I guess I would just leave us, though, with the idea of, well, what would you need in order to be able to trust that Jesus was God? What would he need to do to make himself clear to you? Some people often answer that question if they're skeptical by going, well, the problem is that God hasn't made himself obvious enough to me. I need writing in the sky. I need a picture in the stars. If God is really there, then why couldn't he do that? I think the problem is that if we think that, what kind of relationship do you think we would have with God if we just had writing in the sky, or a kind of clouds saying, hey, you, whatever your name is, I am God and I am here? We wouldn't really know God afterwards. It would be like kind of getting an email from him. But how could God make himself known to us in a way where we could have a real relationship with him? Well, all of a sudden, God coming as a human being, walking the earth, talking to us, living amongst us, all of a sudden that makes sense then, doesn't it? If God doesn't just want us to think that he's there, but he wants us to believe him and have a relationship with him, it makes sense that he would come in a way that he is relatable to as a person, as Jesus. I guess I would just invite you to think, well, maybe that's more believable than a lot of us might think. But thank you very much for your question.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answers as well. They were really good.
No problem, thanks.
Yeah, thank you all for coming along. If this is the first time you're connecting with the Christian Union, then please do fill in our follow-up form and hopefully someone will be in contact with you. Yeah, and again, once again, like Dave mentioned before, on Saturday we do have our Q&A coffee morning. So if you're watching with a friend, please do invite them to come along with you as well. Or if you have any further questions, then please do come along for that. Yeah.